Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are going to take a look at yet another Mattel set, and this is the Camp Adventure set. This is another of the brand new Camp Cretaceous releases that have just recently started to hit Target and are actually now in stock on Target.com. But this is one that I thought was really interesting, on top of having a human character, a new human character, which is one of the characters from the show. We also have a Bumpy figure, but we have two repaints, and the repaints that we have included are a Stegosaurus and Baryonyx, but the glare that is coming off of this box right now is unbearable. So we're going to just take a look at the back of the packaging, and that will now give us a much better view of what figures are inside, which you can see is a really nicely repainted greenish Baryonyx and a beautiful looking Stegosaurus. And this Stegosaurus I was actually particularly excited for because I feel like it's the best version of Stegosaurus so far as the paint schemes go. We had that original kind of like weird greenish version, which was okay, but I would have much rathered a Lost World Jurassic Park style paint scheme on that one. And then we also had the second grayish version, which was again okay, but it was nothing that I would say was really that great. Now we have this really nice looking grayish version, and I think that this one specifically is beautiful in comparison to the other two and a lot more natural as far as the color schemes go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and break these out of the box and take a look at them up close. Now here are all of our figures out of the packaging and right here in front of us, and I definitely will say that at first glance, each and every one of them actually look really nice. But I am specifically quite excited about the human character. I believe his name is Darius, because being children, you would expect them to be around the size of Maisie, as she was a child as well. So you want that smaller size for the figures, and I wasn't quite sure if the human character here was going to be that same size, but I am definitely here to inform you that it is a smaller figure. It's not the same size as some of the adult characters like Malcolm, Muldoon, things like that. So it is definitely a bit smaller than the others and very childlike in appearance as far as the size goes. So that is definitely a plus as far as that figure goes. But when it comes to the dinosaur figures, I am really excited to take a look at these, especially that Stegosaurus. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at them right now. So we are going to start with the Stegosaurus. Now we really don't have to review the sculpt, as I have reviewed this in the past. So we really only have to take a look at what is new with the figure. So looking at the head sculpt here, immediately you can see that the eyes are actually painted quite nicely. And if we take a look at the opposing eye, that one as well is painted really nicely. And that is a huge plus because I remember my initial Stegosaurus from the Mattel line did have quite a bit of quality control issues when it came to the eye. I actually ended up having to purchase it twice to finally get one that had a nicer paint job on it when it came to the eyes. But this one definitely looks good straight away with both eyes. And you can see that the head is primarily like a dark gray, and then it transitions to a lighter gray here in the neck. And then as we move back the body, it continues to stay that lighter gray until we get right here, and then that darker gray picks up again up here on the plates. And you can see that darker gray then runs down along the body, and it looks really, really nice in comparison to that lighter gray, due to having pretty much, the lighter gray is a lighter gray, but it's not that light, and then this darker gray is really nice and dark. So the two darker colors playing off of each other actually looks really nice, and as far as I'm concerned, really natural. And that continues to be the exact same coloration as we move back into the rest of the body, and then once we get back here into the tail, it transitions back to primarily that dark gray. So that is really awesome that we actually have paint that runs the course of the entire body. So it starts up at the head with this really nice dark gray, and then it transitions again to the lighter gray, where the darker gray just kind of runs down onto the body, and then transitions back to the primary coloration being that darker gray at the tip of the tail. So it almost starts and ends the same way, and then looks really nice kind of with a mixture in the middle. And I think that was a very, very nice paint scheme on the part of Mattel with this Stegosaurus, and I think it really does look very natural and realistic for the figure. You can also see that as far as the thagomizers go, we have like a creamy coloration for them, and the paint application of those as well looks really quite nice, and they definitely play off of the dark gray really nicely. And if we look at the underside, we almost have like a pinkish tone for the underbelly of our Stegosaurus. Starts in the chest region, ends right here a little bit past like the pelvic region, and I think it does look really nice as well in comparison to that grayish coloration that we have up there on the upper side. Definitely very nicely done as far as the colors that they've chosen for this Stegosaurus. I really do quite like it. There is the Jurassic Facts app if you would like to add the Stegosaurus to your collection. But again, a really beautiful paint scheme for the Stegosaurus. If it would focus on him, there we go. It's nothing amazing and over the top that, is totally groundbreaking as far as a paint scheme goes. But as far as I'm concerned, I really, really do quite like it. Definitely a very nice look for the figure. And it's actually two different versions of darker grays. You can see this version up here is a little bit different than this version. This gets a little bit darker right here. So we do have some variations within the grays as well. That is also a plus if you ask me. So definitely a beautiful looking Stegosaurus as far as that paint scheme goes. And then the Baryonyx, we have reviewed a ton of Baryonyx figures already, so it's another figure that we don't exactly need to review the sculpt on. Both the Stegosaurus and the Baryonyx have beautiful sculpts that I definitely really quite like. So looking at what is new on this Baryonyx, you can see that the eyes are painted with a yellowish color. The pupil is pretty much, I do believe, that brown coloration, if we can get it to focus again. There we go. So it is just the brown that is this primary head coloration of the Baryonyx. And then looking at this side again, the eyes look pretty good. There's no real QC issues when it comes to the eye paint on either of these figures. And you can see that the head starts with a nice dark brown, and then it also has a green underjaw, a green lower jaw. The teeth appear to be painted really nicely, if our Stegosaurus wasn't in our way here. They appear to be painted pretty nicely. There's a little bit of sloppiness actually in there. I can see some of the paint has run onto the tongue, but it's such a very minute amount that it's not a big deal. No paint on the upper jaw on the inside, but the teeth do actually look really good as far as I'm concerned, especially that upper jaw. Those teeth are painted pretty much perfectly. And then you also have like a pinkish coloration there for the inside of the mouth. A nice gloss coat in there to make sure it shines quite realistically. And then as we move down into the neck, you can see that that dark brown continues, the same dark brown that's up here on the head, and so does that gray. But you also have a little bit of a light coloration here, but it only really is in the throat, because once you get past that throat area, it is just this greenish coloration that you see pretty much everywhere else. And actually, since we're here, here's the Jurassic Facts app of the Baryonyx as well. But you can see that there is no other coloration here on the underside of the Baryonyx. And then up here on the back, again, you can see that this dark brown continues, but it starts to mix with like a different coloration, almost like a chocolate brown, that runs down here onto the legs in certain areas and stops right about here. And then we don't have any more paint variation back here on the tail. It's just green, which I can approve of at times. I think it's nice to have like color that looks a little different than other dinosaurs, but I feel like sometimes Mattel just really needs to run their paint out onto the tail, kind of like they did with the Stegosaurus, and it makes kind of a world of difference at times when it comes to the overall appearance of their figures. Unfortunately, we don't have any fingernail or nail paint on the feet, which is pretty much what we're accustomed to when it comes to the Baryonyx figures, and actually quite a bit of the different Mattel figures. But overall, I still think it is a really nice looking Baryonyx. Definitely another beautiful figure to add to the long list of Mattel Baryonyx figures that we already have. And then as far as Bumpy goes, Bumpy is an absolutely adorable little minifigure, and you can see it's probably one of the smallest minifigures that I think we've had so far. And even being so small, you can see some pretty nice color variation on the figure. We have like a light blue up there on the head, a darker blue for the back of the Ankylosaurus, and then you can also see that the actual spikes here on the head are painted out with a grayish coloration. Very nicely painted eye with a beautiful gloss coat that you can see shining already. And then you have like this yellowish coloration here for the underside of our little Ankylosaurus. And you can see that as far as the sculpt goes, it is actually really nicely sculpted. Tons of detail is found within the sculpt of the figure, and you can see kind of like even some really beautiful osteoderm-like scales that run down the side of the Ankylosaurus. Definitely a very, very nice looking minifigure, and we have articulation, which we can see right there in the tail, so we can move the tail back and forth. It's a little stiff right now as I haven't used it. It also swivels, so you can swivel it around if you would like. But again, a really nicely sculpted and really nicely painted minifigure. Definitely one of the best that we've seen so far as minifigures go when it comes to the paint application, because there are quite a few different tones of color included, but still a really beautiful little figure as far as Bumpy goes. And then we have Darius, the human character. And you can see that as far as he goes, he also looks really nice. And straight away, look at the beautiful paintwork that we have here with like this necklace that he is wearing. Really nicely painted, absolutely beautiful. And you can continue to see how nice that sculpt work and paintwork is all over the figure. Lots of different folds and everything in his jacket that he is wearing, along with some really nice paintwork with these kind of lines down the sleeve. And you can also see that the head sculpt of Darius looks really good. The eyes are painted beautifully. Very, very nicely done. Lots of detail to be found on the head sculpt of Darius. Really nicely sculpted out hair, and all the paint appears to be perfectly placed. There is no sloppiness at all. And then we move down into the lower half. You can see again lots of wrinkles in the pants and everything. Beautifully sculpted out, very realistically sculpted. The shoes also look really good as far as the sculpt and paintwork goes. Even having the shoelaces painted out, which is also a huge plus. So definitely a very nice human character. I absolutely cannot wait to watch this show. Just beyond excited about it, and then I'll know more about Darius in the actual show, but I can tell you that his figure right here is really nice. As far as articulation goes on our figures, we have articulation here in the shoulder and the elbow, as well as the ability to move the arms out. We also have articulation in the head, which does work quite well. We have swiveling right here. We also have articulation in the hip area and then in the knee. So there is a ton of articulation with our human figure. We already saw Bumpy's articulation with the tail. As far as the Baryonyx, it's pretty much your standard articulation, your usual articulation for the figure. You do have the articulated jaw, which is actually operated by the button here on the back. And my button actually, for some reason, a little wonky. It's not working at times, but see, it gets stuck, which is the first time I've actually encountered this issue on any of the Mattel Baryonyx figures so far. But you can see that it's pretty much that standard Mattel Baryonyx action feature, pretty much what we got on the Roaravor, minus the sounds. We also have articulation in the arms, forward and back, out away from the body, the legs, forward and back, out away from the body quite a little ways, and then the tail does not have articulation. Some of the Mattel figures do have articulation in the tail. The Baryonyx is not one of them. And then we also have the Stegosaurus. So as far as the Stegosaurus articulation, we have the head, which can actually swivel and then move up and down, left and right, all that fun stuff. We also have the front leg and the rear legs. The legs can actually move out away from the body, as far as the rear legs can, as well as the front, actually. You can see that. They move out away from the body. So there is some very nice articulation in that aspect. And then you have two different joints for the tail as far as the movement goes, and that is due to the fact that, if I could find it right here, we have a button. If we turn it around, actually, it'll probably be a little better to see. So we use this plate right here to then operate the tail. And you can see how that works right there. Swings quite nicely, definitely something that, as far as children go, they would have a fun time clubbing dinosaurs with their dinosaur's tail, with their Stegosaurus tail. So lots of really, really nice articulation on all of these figures. Bumpy obviously having the least amount of articulation, but still some pretty decent articulation as far as a minifigure goes, with at least having one spot that does articulate. As far as a size goes, now this one's going to be all over the place as far as a size, because we've got quite a bit to size. So for a Bumpy, about 2 inches or 5 centimeters in length. We're not really going to get much height or anything. And then for Darius, we are going to see him come in at about 3 1/4 inches or around 8 centimeters, somewhere in that range. And the Baryonyx and Stegosaurus we have, of course, sized before, but we'll do it again anyway, just because. As far as a height for the Stegosaurus, you're going to see that at about somewhere in the close to 7-inch range, or about 17.5, maybe 18 centimeters for a height. For a length, if we go from the tail here to the head, you are looking at about 13.5 inches or around 35 centimeters. Pretty sizable figure the Stegosaurus is, and actually the Baryonyx is as well. So for a length, you are looking at about the 13-inch range, maybe actually 13 1/4 inches or about 34 centimeters. And then for a height, we are going to see the Baryonyx at about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, hopefully giving you a good idea of what the size of all of these figures is. And you can actually see right there between Muldoon and Darius, you can see the difference between the adult size and the child size with the Mattel figures, so you can definitely see that there is a pretty significant difference there. And Bumpy is incredibly small, which I'd like to think you could probably tell that as well but the other two are pretty much your standard Mattel figures. If you've purchased any in the past, you'll already know about how big those are. So this Mattel Camp Cretaceous Camp Adventure set is definitely another really cool release as far as these brand new Camp Cretaceous figures that have just recently started to hit targets. This one actually was only announced a few weeks ago, so it's really fresh and new. It showed up in store really quickly after actually being announced by Collect Jurassic, I believe, was the one that broke the news on this set. So it's really cool to see something get announced and so quickly then hit stores, which was nice to actually be able to acquire something and not have to wait too long. But once I had initially seen the images of this set, I was excited due to the fact that there was a new Stegosaurus included. I am still hoping and waiting for Mattel to make some sort of a Legacy Collection Stegosaurus, as far as a Lost World Jurassic Park Stegosaurus, which then you would probably have to resculpt the figure a little bit and maybe give it a more correct sculpt, as this is more based on the Jurassic World version of Stegosaurus. So hopefully Mattel will do that at some point and then give it a really nice greenish coloration. But until then, I feel like this is the best that the Stegosaurus has looked so far as the coloration goes. I feel like all the coloration used on this figure is really natural and very beautifully done. Definitely the type of coloration I could see on a very large animal like this in real life, which is definitely a huge plus. Whenever I can see a coloration on one of these figures and say, I think that looks natural, I really do think that is a pretty good compliment to the figure overall. The Baryonyx as well does actually look really quite natural, and now actually looking at it here from a distance, I realize when it's not up close that that coloration, that brown that's on the head, is actually the same chocolate brown that's on the back of the body, not that darker brown. Before it kind of looked like it was the darker brown, but having it in a better light here, you can actually see that those browns are different. But regardless, it is still a really nice Baryonyx. Again, it's another repainted figure, as we've had this sculpt numerous times already, but I think that it is a really nice color scheme for the Baryonyx. As far as Darius goes, another really beautiful human figure, and really the only thing that, I guess besides Bumpy, which Bumpy's already included in a different set as far as the minifigure goes, but the only really new thing that is in this set that's a new sculpt that we haven't had before, and I think Darius is really nicely done as far as the sculpt and paintwork goes. A lot of care clearly was gone into this figure, and it is definitely shining through when you look at it. It's a beautiful looking human figure as far as this Mattel line goes. And then Bumpy, that little baby Ankylosaurus, also looks really, really nice. Beautiful sculpt, beautiful detail, very nicely sculpted for something so small and beautifully painted for something so small, because there is quite a few different variations of paint included, which is something we don't often see when it comes to the minifigures of Mattel. So it seems like Bumpy is really kind of getting that like special treatment when it comes to their figures, because I've seen a few images of a few different Bumpy figures. It seems as though Bumpy is definitely a little bit favored as far as the paint apps go. But all four of these figures are really, really beautifully done, and definitely surefire wins each and every one of them. So if you want this set, I will include a link in the description to Target.com, where you can actually order it right now, or you can just head to your local Target, as it probably would be there by now. Seems like most Targets are kind of resetting their entire Jurassic section and putting out all kinds of new stuff as far as these Camp Cretaceous figures go to really promote that upcoming Netflix series. So there's a pretty good chance that it is actually at your local Target, but again, you can also order it online. So make sure you check the description. I will include a link right there for you to do just that, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.